Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest information that we got on what is still Tropical Storm Francine. I'll be quite honest with you. I thought we'd be waking up to Hurricane Francine this morning, but we are not, and that is because Francine has struggled overnight and even into this morning. It continues to struggle with just a little bit of dry air. It's really messing with the process of Francine getting its structure together, which these tropical cyclones need to have a well-defined structure to really undergo any kind of moderate to even rapid intensification, which we really hope does not happen at all. But the peak intensity, forecast intensity, is still at 100 miles per hour as of this morning. That could change, that could tweak. So what does this mean, though? Has some of the data changed? Has our thinking changed? We're going to go over all of that in this video. We're going to go over what's going on with the system right now, the latest from the National Hurricane Center, all the model guidance. We'll speak on the environment over the next 24 to 36 hours as it cruises north across the Gulf of Mexico. That does suggest at least gradual strengthening with this system. And then we will speak heavy on impacts. I'm pretty sure I'll answer your questions. I'm not going to be able to mention every single town, community out there. I'll even probably miss a state or two, but just definitely know where you are on a map. That's not a knock on anybody, but believe it or not, there's people that do not know where their state is on a map. I hate to say it. It's not a knock on anybody, not trying to be disrespectful, but that's very important when it comes to the weather, really anything in life. But I got you covered there, and then we'll talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Tuesday. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Asking for prayers, I do not butcher any town names. I know I did last night in Louisiana. I actually got Google Maps pulled up at the bottom of my monitor right here. We're going to try to mention some towns and cities, especially in the state of Louisiana. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is our system. I mean, it does not look well put together. The actual center of the system is right here. You see the more defined spin down here, really tucked into the western Gulf of Mexico. That is our defined low-level circulation. This thing's moving pretty slow right now at about 4 to 6 miles per hour. The main blob, I guess you would say, of energy, convection, is actually displaced well to the north and northeast, tucked up way up here in the northwest Gulf of Mexico, just south of Louisiana. So you see the blow-ups of whites, even some pockets of pink. This tells us that there's some colder cloud tops, intense, tall convection that continues just fire around and associated with this actual tropical cyclone. So it is not very healthy this morning. But one thing we know about the Gulf of Mexico is things can go boom very fast. And I actually spoke on the opposite of that in last night's video. I mentioned just because we're in the Gulf of Mexico, I think there's a common thought process that everything is going to go boom in the Gulf of Mexico. I think just several weeks ago is a perfect example of how things could potentially not go boom, and that is with Debbie. If you remember, we thought Debbie could maybe undergo a period of rapid intensification. Debbie never did. In fact, it only made landfall, I believe, as an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. And that was a good case scenario. Hopefully we have that better case scenario with Francine also. But this system continues to struggle somewhat this morning, which has kind of caught us a little bit off guard. What does that mean, though, going forward? We're about to talk about all of that. So this is current conditions. What about the latest from the National Hurricane Center? This is per the 5 a.m. update. Still a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is forecast to become a Category 1 80-mile-per-hour hurricane by this afternoon. But folks, it could still just be a tropical storm by this afternoon. Nothing will surprise me. And then from this afternoon to about 2 a.m. tonight, Wednesday, it goes from a Category 1 still to a Category 1, higher in Category 1, 90-mile-per-hour hurricane. I think that once we get into tonight and to tomorrow, that's when I think things get a little wild. I think we could get a period of rapid intensification if this improves dramatically today, sometime tonight into tomorrow morning. From 2 a.m. Wednesday to 2 p.m. Wednesday, it goes from a 90-mile-per-hour to a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane. So peak forecast intensity is still 100 miles per hour. You see the red areas where we have hurricane warnings in southern Louisiana. We have tropical storm warnings that are underlapped or overlapped by hurricane watches just east of these hurricane warnings. But this could get upgraded to hurricane warnings. There's been a tick east in model guidance which is not good news for like Baton Rouge and New Orleans and even areas more into Mississippi. Okay, but we're going to have an all-out hurricane. Strong tropical storm cruising right through the southern half of Louisiana, southeast Louisiana, right over Baton Rouge. And then it's going to get into southwestern Mississippi, still be a tropical storm, bring impacts to Jackson. And then what is it going to do once it continues to head north? We still got to figure that one out, but of course it'll weaken with land interaction. But it'll probably bring a big plume of heavy rain all the way up to St. Louis into the Midwest, etc. And it will bring a tornado threat most likely on the east quadrant of this system, especially down here tomorrow. And we'll talk more on that as we get a little bit deeper into the video. So that's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Peak intensity is still a 100-mile-per-hour Category 2 hurricane before it makes landfall somewhere along the central Louisiana coastline. The more classic look that you guys are probably more used to seeing, H icon stands for hurricane, S for tropical storm, D for tropical depression. I will note, the more this ticks east, the more it's going to bring more rain and gusty winds like Alabama. I do think that we'll have some direct impacts even as far east as the Carolinas, as we have kind of I would say an onshore pool of moisture that kind of goes like this. So I would watch, even areas of like the Western Carolinas, Northeast Georgia for a lot of rain, maybe all the way up to Virginia. We'll talk more on that when we need to and we figure out a little bit more details to that. But that is the latest kind of look from the classic cone from the National Hurricane Center. Now, I do want to start this off before we go into model guidance, telling you guys this is a 992 millibar low. That's important as we go over all the model guidance and what it's initializing as. So it's a 992 millibar low moving north-northwest at 5 miles per hour. Pretty slow still. This is the 5 a.m. update. Let's go over the latest GFS. We're going to spend a little time on the GFS. It's initializing as a 993. And it is a 992. So it's only 1 millibar off. So the GFS is doing well as far as initiation with this system. We continue to move forward here. It doesn't show it improving much between now and early afternoon, but from between early afternoon and this evening, it does drop a good several millibars to a 992-ish storm to a 986. So it's beginning to get to that hurricane status by the time we get into this evening. We're already getting a ton of moisture getting pushed into Louisiana, even southern Alabama and Mississippi. We continue to move forward here. This deepens even more, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, 24 hours from now, this is all the way down to a 971 millibar low hurricane according to the GFS. So that would make it a full-fledged Category 2 hurricane. Now, it's still got a good bit of ocean to travel over. So you're thinking, is this going to drop another 10, 20 millibars? Well, on the latest GFS, it doesn't show it doing that. In fact, it actually weakens the system, and the millibars actually rise from a 971 to a 976. So a good 5 millibars, and then makes landfall. It's ticked pretty far east now. I mean, right into the bayou of Louisiana, right into southeast Louisiana, goes right over New Orleans as a hurricane, Baton Rouge, and then gets fully over southern Mississippi. This would bring more impacts further east into southern Mississippi if something like this was to happen. And then this continues, then it starts to head due north again after moving northeast, and a full-fledged tropical storm goes right through Mississippi, brings impacts especially to western Alabama too, and it cruises this low right into western Tennessee as we were getting into Thursday evening. This will cancel schools for a lot of areas across the Dixie states, I think. Obviously, especially like Mississippi and Louisiana. But definitely a high impact system, folks. But I'm going to back it up to here. Okay, this is the latest run of the GFS. Let's back it up 9 runs, okay? 8 or 9 runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9 runs ago, about 2 days ago, worth of runs, this thing was way further west, okay, and still out in the Gulf of Mexico. Now we do the trend all the way to the current run, okay? Check out how much it ticks east to the point where it is now, which is almost right over and cruising right over areas of like New Orleans, for example, and Thibodeau and Houma, etc. So that's a pretty substantial, I would say, not from one run to one run, but a gradual 2 days worth of runs, a steady east trend for sure. So pretty wild stuff. Now the Euro continues to be further west. Euro initializing pretty well as a 993 millibar tropical storm. Kind of like the GFS, does not show much strengthening over the next 12 hours, really. In fact, by the time we get into this evening, still just a 989 millibar low. That would make it a strong tropical storm, low in Category 1 hurricane, but it does strengthen very gradually, I would say. It doesn't undergo really any period of rapid intensification, it doesn't look like. But, the timeline of this is sped up. This could make a landfall sometime Wednesday afternoon on the Euro. Is a 976 Category 2 hurricane, much further west than what the GFS is just suggesting. So, it's pretty wild. I mean, that's a pretty substantial difference as far as where the worst of the conditions is going to be in Louisiana from the Euro and the GFS. Okay, and then it continues to move, and this would bring more impacts to, say, northeastern Louisiana, heavier impacts into western Mississippi, and would even bring impacts into eastern sections of Arkansas. When you compare that to the GFS, it's just everything's just shunted a little bit further east. Okay, now what about the hurricane models? I can tell you almost all of them are initializing a little bit too strong, but I will show you the couple hurricane models that are initializing the best. And this is, what is this? This is the H-Wharf model. Yeah, H-Wharf model from overnight. Initializing as a 988, so a little bit too strong, but, it's not too far off. It has it getting all the way to a sub 980 millibar low by this afternoon. I don't know if I buy that. I really don't. But it shows the structure dramatically improving. And then it has it dropping all the way to a 963 millibar, almost Category 3 hurricane, if that's not what it is. And you see the northern eye wall of this system. It looks quite intense, heading right towards the Louisiana coastline. And, this would bring it in about midday, right into the central Louisiana coastline. I mean, if this is correct, it would go right, up into, what is that, Marsh Island, Shark Island. It would go right into, it would heavily impact the town of Lafayette, Abbeville, and, just trying to mention a couple names here, but man, it would bring a nasty eye wall feature right into this area Wednesday afternoon. And then it will continue to bring heavy impacts across all of southeastern Louisiana. It'll bring a tornado threat with these banding features to the east, all kinds of impacts. I mean, it's an all-out hurricane. And then it would move into Mississippi, okay? That would be a really bad case scenario. What about, I think this is the HFA. Yep, HFA model. Initializing is a 989. We continue to move forward here. By the time we get into this evening, still a 981 millibar hurricane. And then by the time we get into Wednesday morning, it is all the way down to a 973. Not quite as strong as the H-Wharf model. I kind of buy this model run a little bit more. I don't like the idea of a fully closed eye wall all the way around the southern side of this low. I just don't have a hunch that this is going to be really lopsided. The worst of the conditions is going to be on one side of the system, but we'll see. But it does have it kind of maintaining strength from Wednesday morning all the way through Wednesday PM when it will make that eventual landfall. But as you can tell, on this particular hurricane model run, this is much further east. So this makes landfall, kind of right into between, of course, if people don't know the actual geographical features of Louisiana, it's not like, for example, in South Carolina where you can drive just right to the coast. Okay, you kind of get into marshland. Most of the larger communities are several, if not 50, 100 miles off the actual coastline. So, this will kind of move in and heavily, in fact, what the Morgan City area, Franklin, Thibodaux, Houma, this will bring more impacts to this area, and then obviously bring a lot of impacts into like New Orleans being over here. But this will move right over this area. This would kind of go right, kind of take a similar path of like what Ida took, except this system would come in from a little bit further to the west. Ida kind of came in from right in the central sections of the Gulf of Mexico. But this would bring a lot of impacts, in some cases devastating impacts. And will continue to ride over southeast Louisiana and then bring a lot of impacts. I mean, in this case, this would bring impacts all the way into Alabama. I mean, a tornado event could be ongoing late Wednesday night. So we will also look at the HFB model. And same thing, we take it all the way into Wednesday, and it has it all the way, Wednesday morning, by the way, 966 millibar major hurricane. And look at that nasty eye wall on the northern side. And this goes kind of in between the H-Wolf model and the HFA model. So it's kind of like a happy medium. So more so effects, I would say, goes right into like heavily impacts the Franklin and like the Morgan City area. So I saw one comment yesterday evening that said, I just need to know what it's going to do. That's pretty much what the comment says. And by the way, I think that those kind of comments are incredibly rude, but you know, it's just the nature of doing what I do. If I could tell you exactly what the weather was going to do, folks, I'd be a millionaire. We would be saving people's lives left and right like it ain't nobody's business. Nobody knows exactly what it's going to do. It blows my mind. It seems like the same people that say that stuff are the same people that, you know, say weather people are always wrong. That's why I go over all the model guides, because I want to show you how tough it is to forecast this stuff. It's difficult. It really is. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, guys. If you just want a 1 minute video of somebody telling you, I'm going to get an 82 mile per hour wind gust in my backyard, but it may be a 52 mile per hour wind gust in my neighbor's backyard with 1.7 inches of rain, you know, you're not going to get that information. So that's why I make these longer videos to explain all the scenarios here. But this would bring bad impacts across all of southeast Louisiana, would bring big impacts even into southern Mississippi, widespread power outages. It could turn to a nasty scenario. So we continue to move forward here and we talk about the environment. So that's all the model guidance. So you take all that, I'm talking about it for 10, 12 minutes. What you take from that is that models are still latching on to the idea of this strengthening at a pretty moderate, at least a moderate pace over the next 36 hours. So I would tell you the environment that this system is working with is decent. It's pretty well. I mean, you got air being dispersed out away from the system. By the way, this is the upper levels of the atmosphere, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. But I want you to notice kind of right into here, the lines are kind of going like this. Okay, it's being dispersed out like this, but you got kind of this weird feature that, it's really close right into here. So really tucked in close to the actual system. It looks like it's dealing with just a little bit of shear, like really close to the core. This is allowing for just a little bit of dry air to get in, messing with the structure of the system. But kind of outside of the system, I would say the structure, the upper wind pattern is pretty decent. I think it's just right near the core that's kind of being messed with a little bit, and it shows up well. If you actually look at the satellite visibility here, you see how the core of the system, has some intense thunderstorms, but you kind of get just outside of this core, and it's kind of void of any kind of convection. So it kind of makes sense that this is getting bothered and messed with a little bit, kind of tucked in a little bit closer to the system. So we'll have to see, that could tamper with the full all-out development worst case scenario with the system, which we really hope that is the case. But as we continue to move forward here, the environment, I would say at the last second isn't the best. We're starting to get flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere that is hitting the system pretty good. Yeah, we're getting a nice outflow of air right into here. But on the western side of the system, we're getting hit by shear as those embedded arrowheads and those lines are hitting they're hitting the system right on the west side. This is basically messing with the moisture and the structure of the system on the west side of the system. This is going to allow for some dry air to try to penetrate the core of the system, but does it get there in time? That's a big case here. That's the big discussion. But the thing is this morning, if you're initializing with model guidance, you would say, what dry air? This is fully shielded with a ton of moist air. And I would say, I agree, but a lot of times these models are not always going to be dead on. And in this case, the system does not have a healthy structure. And if you looked at moisture in the mid-levels, which is what this is, you would think, well, that doesn't seem to be the case. But you continue to move forward here. I want you to watch. Yes, this system is deepening. That number right there is dropping. But if you look right into here, there's a lot of dry air starting to get very close to the core of this system. Starting to get very close. Tons of moist air on the north side to the east side of this system. But that dry air is starting to get really close to the core of the system, which is the actual center of the actual low-level circulation, which is where that L is I just circled. So obviously this thing is rotating like this, right? So it's trying to suck in some of this dry air to the west. And the reason that dry air is present is because the western side of the system is getting hit by wind shear and kind of eating up the convection on the western side of the system. So basically, the outer structure of this system is getting dried out on the west and southwest side. And if you keep this going, does it ever catch up with the actual core of the system in time after strengthening, which we are expecting over the next 24 hours? Well, in this case, it never does. So ultimately, it does make a landfall as a pretty strong hurricane. It catches up with it right the last second. Watch how this area of green right here begins to disappear right before landfall, which is right here, the coastline of Louisiana. Watch how that green sort of dissipates and dry air catches up with the low pressure right there, but it's too late. It's already made landfall. It's already done the damage, and yeah, it's already hit. So we hope that that dry air interferes with the low-level circulation much faster, or either in the shorter term, this system just can't get its act together, from the start. So we'll continue to watch that. But talking about impacts, we'll go over this. Chances to see tropical storm force wind gust, 40 mile per hour winds or higher, you might as well say. I mean, there's pretty much a 90 to 100% chance of that along the central Louisiana coastline. I mean, even inland, there's a 70 to 90% chance of it. Well, almost all the way up to the Louisiana-Mississippi line here in southwest Mississippi. So a lot of heavy impacts into this area. 40 mile per hour wind gusts, not the end of the world, but when you look at the chances to see hurricane force wind gusts, which is 75 mile per hour winds or higher, I mean, that's when, you're starting to get up to a 30 to 40, even 40 to 50% chance to see winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher along the central Louisiana coastline. So this is getting real, folks. Hurricane force conditions are on the way for these areas. Now, another way to look at wind speeds, this is the actual predicted wind speeds from the National Weather Service. So the experts, not just some random model run, they are forecasting right into, what is that? That's Marsh Island, ain't it? Marsh Island. Y'all might call it something different. It's pronounced Marsh, but who knows? Y'all might call it something different. Marsh Island, the Shark Island area. Let's see. There's a community called, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but Intracoastal City. You got Jeanerette, Cypermort, Franklin. Then I know some of y'all are probably laughing at me. That's okay. If you've been watching for any length of time on my channel, you guys know that I'm an expert at butchering names. Somebody said in the comments yesterday, you got the Cajuns laughing like crazy at you. But that would basically go right into this area right in here. Okay, this would bring 85 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts into this area, folks. And I mean, unfortunately, Baton Rouge is like right here. If the system takes this track, it would bring hurricane force winds all the way into Baton Rouge. I mean, and it would bring some very strong winds into southwest Mississippi, Macomb, Brookhaven. I mean, even strong winds all the way up interstate, what is that, 55 into Jackson. Okay, so definitely strong winds coming, guys. And you look at the GFS. What does the latest GFS show us? Well, the wild thing is it's shifted significantly east. So this will bring the strongest winds, more so, into Homa, Thibodaux, Morgan City, and, even New Orleans, and even some strong winds in the Gulfport. I mean, you got 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts, not as strong as what the National Weather Service is actually forecasting. And then you watch the difference here. Let's look at the Euro. See how much that shifted? So it's almost looking to me like the National Weather Service is agreeing more with that western track, because the Euro follows suit with the National Weather Service here, and, et cetera there, and brings those potential for those 85 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts right into that Marsh Island, kind of Shark Island area. I mean, right into all those communities. This would bring big time impacts into Lafayette, Franklin, even Morgan City, right up to Baton Rouge, where you would get all out to low-wind Category 1 hurricane status winds. So this would bring strong winds all the way up into our friends here across the Deep South, too. I mean, you look at the Deep South here, this would bring very strong winds well north. And if we look at the National Weather Service forecast, I mean, it has this corridor of very strong winds all the way up into northern Mississippi as we're getting later into this week. So this is just your classic hurricane in the Gulf that's on the way. Now, if you look at you look at rain, that yellow color, that is 4 to 6 inches of rain. That muted orange looking color, 6 to 8 inches of rain. And then this all out orange color, which is right where the center of the path is projected to go, that's 8 to 12 inches of rain. So, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, all of southeast Louisiana, southern sections of Mississippi is going to get hit hard with 4 to 8 inches of rain. But a lot of rain is going to move also, all the way up the Mississippi River Valley area. I mean, all the way into the Boot Hill, Missouri, where you could get several inches of rain in these areas. And, just another way to look at this is the Weather Prediction Center, the experts. The entire state of Mississippi getting anywhere from 3 to as much as 6 inches of rain. Southeast Louisiana obviously will get the most, with anywhere from 6 to as much as 9 inches of rain, I would say. Alabama's kind of cut in half. One portion of the state, western side, will get more than the eastern side. And then look at all this rain for the western half of Tennessee. I mean, and this gets all the way up into like the Ohio Valley, folks. I mean, this is all the way through next Monday evening. Big plume of rain gets all the way up into western Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri. And I do want to pay attention to this feature here. Look at this area right here that's showing 2 to almost 5 inches of rain in upstate South Carolina, northeast Georgia, and then western North Carolina. That is a scenario we need to watch. And we'll talk more on that here in the coming videos. I don't want to spend too much time on that. This video will go on for ages. But a washout could be on the way for this weekend, later this week, for this area of the Carolinas and Georgia. So we'll continue to figure that one out. The chances of excessive rainfall, a moderate risk over the next 5 days for southeast Louisiana and then southern Mississippi. That means there's a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in any given location. The latest from the storm surge, this has not changed since last night's video. 5 to 10 feet right here along the central Louisiana coastline. I could see this area right here where it says 4 to 7 feet going up if we continue to get some ticks east. But 4 to 7 feet of storm surge, 2 to 4 right here from the mouth of the Mississippi to the Mississippi-Alabama border, and even some storm surge for the Alabama coastline. So storm surge all day today in Texas. You get to the far most northern section of the shore of Texas, 3 to 5 feet from Hyde Island to Cameron, Louisiana, of storm surge is possible. Folks, there will be a tornado threat too. There's already a slight risk for tomorrow, level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, stretching from the central coastline of Louisiana all the way to the panhandle of Florida. And this is driven off a tornado threat. There's a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in any given location in this brown area. So this does include Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Gulfport, Mobile, all the way to Pensacola. And there is going to be a dry shot of air that undercuts this tropical cyclone, which I think could increase the tornado threat. Kind of like what we saw with Beryl. We want to watch because this could be a storyline that does not get talked about as much. But I'm telling you, we'll take a look at the HRRR model. We'll start off tomorrow. As we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, you see these banding features right here? I'll try to draw on this right into here, making their way onshore. Here's the actual center of the low right here. All these banding features moving onshore right into here, they will have rotation with them. They will be spinning. There could be a situation where we have water spouts that move onshore. If you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast in this circled area, I mean, even extending back over here, I'm telling you that this is a legit tornado threat tomorrow afternoon. Even into, tomorrow evening, this continues, these banding features on the east side. We call it the dirty side of these tropical systems. And then you look at this band right here. I mean, making its way all the way across the entire panhandle of Florida. There will be a legit tornado threat with that, guys. So please be aware of that and take that serious tomorrow into tomorrow night. So that's an update on the tropics. And I will look at the updraft Felicity swath, which doesn't really show, well, yeah, it does. You see these highlighted colors here. This indicates rotation with some of these storms. It looks the worst just offshore, but it does look pretty potent along the Gulf coastline too. So that's an update on the tropics. We'll talk about what's going on back home. There's the big plume of moisture. There's the spin here in the Gulf of Mexico. There's all the tropical moisture waiting to be pushed into the U.S. Coastline, the Gulf coastline. A little bit of moisture off the coast of the southeast. And we got some moisture cruising across the middle and north central areas of the country. So we'll continue to watch this, but out west, quiet. The eastern U.S., pretty much quiet. Watches, warnings, and advisories. It's littered with tropical alerts down here in Louisiana and surrounding states. You got tropical storm warnings up for that dark red color, for more of that kind of pinkish red color right here. Those are actually hurricane warnings. Heat advisories for South Florida, flood watches, of course, will probably get pushed a little bit further north here in the coming hours across Louisiana, and especially Mississippi and even Alabama, or maybe even western Tennessee, with this big plume of tropical moisture from Francine that will push inland. We got red flag warnings in this pink, excessive heat warnings continuing for Southern California. So we look at the excessive rainfall outlook for today. Not that bad today. Tomorrow will be a different story. There's a slight risk for Southern Louisiana, which means there's at least a 15% chance of flash flood guidance meeting. There's at least a 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. Today, there will be a little bit of a tornado threat in extreme southern Louisiana, 2% risk, so you don't want to ignore that today. It's pretty low, but it's there. That's why you do have that marginal risk for southern Louisiana. So let's talk about the southeast first. Here comes all the moisture pushing in from Francine. Francine right here. There's going to be a lot of tropical moisture across Florida today, just on and off. Showers and storms, nothing different than what you've seen the last couple weeks. Steady light rain, at times heavy, will make its way into the Gulf coastline by this evening. And then by the time you get into the overnight hours into tomorrow, things will start to go downhill fast in the southern half of Louisiana. And the timeline of this looks to be speeding up, so it looks to me like this system is going to make landfall sometime during the day tomorrow rather than sometime tomorrow night. So I think that this hurricane, by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, we'll be staring down that Louisiana coastline pretty close. So the rest of the southeast, though, over the next 48 hours, pretty quiet weather. We do take a closer look, though, at rainfall between now and the next 24 hours from Louisiana along the entire Gulf coastline, anywhere from 1 to as much as 2 inches of rain. Tomorrow will be the bigger day of weather for sure as Francine makes landfall. But today up here in the northeast, folks, there ain't a whole lot to talk about. Northern Maine, some scattered showers. The rest of New England, the northeast, and the mid-Atlantic, beautiful day expected. Enjoy your Tuesday. The south central U.S., we kind of go right back to talking about Francine. I think along the Texas coastline, obviously southern half of Louisiana will continue to get tropical moisture all day and all night. I think it'll lessen up along the Texas coastline as we get into tonight. But a closer look at the Texas coastline, because I don't want to just ignore you guys. How much does these banding features push onshore? You know, I think that a lot of them will stay offshore, but some of them will just all out push onshore. And when they do, you'll get some tropical storm force wind gusts, 35 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts are possible. Really anywhere along the Texas coastline. Like this is around early afternoon. We're getting some rain along the immediate Texas coastline. But as we get into this evening, into the overnight hours, this begins to clear out and becomes, a non-story then. So the north central U.S., just some scattered storms are possible out there. Wisconsin, the upper Midwest, the UP of Michigan. I mean, even getting into northern lower Michigan later tonight, could get some showers over the next 24 hours. But as you can tell, this is not a very big deal at all. Just some showers that'll cruise across from Minnesota into Wisconsin, into the state of Michigan for the most part. Western U.S., quiet weather. Not a whole lot expected. Some scattered thunderstorms are possible across the central Rockies. As you can see, these pop-ups and of green and yellow. Some moisture will make it into the Pacific Northwest ahead of a system. So we will start to get some steady rain in the Olympic Mountains and the coastal range. And eventually, as we're waking up tomorrow morning, we're dealing with a good bit of moisture as we get a Pacific storm that moves into the western sections of Oregon and Washington State. So that'll be something to talk about. Temperatures today, it's warming on up across the southeast and the deep south. Cloud cover will keep temperatures a little bit cooler, though, along the immediate Gulf coastline. But, if you do get some breaks in sunshine, temperatures rising back into the upper 80s, low 90s. Northeast will be cooler today. Midwest, 80s. The high plains, hot, 90s. Western U.S., pretty cool, but you get down to the southwest, it's still pretty hot. And I wouldn't say cool, but it's more comfortable for early September standards. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day. We'll get you another update when we can. God bless.